I will open council time for Wednesday, February the 10th. And we'll first cover old business, and that is the minutes. And then we're going to actually allow for new business 2.1 to jump forward because of a previous appointment that I think the fire chief has. So would somebody please move to accept the minutes of the last meeting?
I move to accept the minutes.
Is there a second? I need a second, folks.
Okay, you have a second. I'm sorry, I'm having connectivity issues again.
Okay, without objection, we will approve the minutes. Moving on to 2.1, CRF Title V funding. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Fire impact fees, Fire District 3. Do we have somebody?
Oliver from Community Planning will be presenting this information for the council's review today. And if the council wishes, the fire chief from Fire District 3 is available to answer questions. So I would like to hand it over to Oliver.
Thank you, Kathleen, and good morning, councillors. For the record, Oliver Jaco, Community Planning Director. Councillors, let me just provide you a very quick background. The county, Clark County assesses impact fees, particularly transportation impact fees, park impact fees, and school impact fees. And that is as a result of the passage of the Growth Management Act, and Clark County is a fully county planning under the Growth Management Act. So in 1990, the council or the commissioners at the time passed or adopted the impact fee program, and that is codified in Title 40. We have this request. So as I indicated, the impact fee is only limited at this time to traffic, schools, and parks. There is no provision to assess fire impact fees. So with this request, it will require, if the council approve, it will require three things to happen. One is to amend the comprehensive plan document, either in land use or in the capital facilities element, to provide for, whether it's a policy or a strategy, but to provide for assessment of fire impact fees. The second thing that needs to happen in conjunction with that plan amendment is also amendment to our Title 40, the section dealing with impact fees, to provide for fire impact fee assessment and also to include the formula for assessing fire impact fees. The third thing that needs to happen is interlocal agreement between the county and Fire District 3. You can call it interlocal agreement between the two agencies, or a memorandum of understanding. That agreement will specify the collection for the fire impact fee, the holding and distribution of the fees. Included in that agreement will also be between the county and Fire District 3 to agree on the administrative costs to the county for assessing the fire impact fee. The final thing I need to add is that because this request, if council asks us to proceed, will require plan amendment. And as you know, by statute, we are required, outside of the periodic review of the comp plan, to only amend the comp plan once a year. And the last 2020 amendment to the comp plan, we will be coming to the council, I believe February 16, if I'm not mistaken, for you to adopt the action that you've taken on the 2020 annual reviews and docket. And if you adopt that on the 16th, by the charter, that has to go into effect 10 days after, which means sometime in March, if my math is correct. So if the council were to direct us to proceed, the earliest this will go into effect at your direction will likely be March of 2022. So the other thing I need to add is that Fire District 3 did submit their capital facilities plan. They also submitted their district boundary. The document that they submitted shows that if approved, the assessment will be on new single-family development within the district boundary in the amount of $512 per single family. And for multi-family, I think it's $241 per unit. And then for non-residential, which will imply industrial development or commercial, at $0.62 or so per square footage. Now, the council knows that in the rural area, we do not allow multi-family or commercial. So that commercial and multi-family rate will only apply to development, commercial and industrial development within the city limits of Battleground where those are allowed. Where potentially this could apply is if there are commercial, although it might be very small and the chief may correct me, if any development, be it commercial, store or whatever that is within the rural center, that will imply Brushberry, Hawkinson, and Meadow Glade. Those three rural centers appear to be within the Fire District 3 boundaries. So in the future, that will be where this will apply. The rate will apply if the commercial or store or whatever developed in those areas. And finally, the fee will only be assessed at the time of building permit issuance. So with that, I will stop there and take any questions that you may have, councillors.
Are there questions of council? And I think I have questions, but I'll let other councillors go ahead first. And I can't see anybody to give them the ability to speak. So I guess just go ahead and speak.
Well, Madam Chair, can you see me okay? I think I have my connectivity back. Are you seeing me? Okay, so we had this meeting during the one-on-ones, and I had all my questions answered from Oliver. I do have some questions of the chief or representative of the fire district once we get to that point.
Questions of Oliver. I guess, Oliver, my question would be, at this point in time, is this needed for Battleground to implement a fee as well? Or is Battleground already doing that?
Councillor, I think the chief may answer that. I'm not aware, and I should have reached out to Battleground official to see if they're already assessing the fees, but I don't know. I could get back to you on that, Councillor.
Well, is the chief on?
Yes, we'll move him over to a panelist now. And,
Okay, thank you.
His board, I think his board chair is also available, so we'll move both of them over to panelists right now.
Okay.
And the question was asked of me, councillors, how many fire districts do we have now in the county? There's about 11. There is one area that says no district. If you include that, that would be 12, but there are about 11 fire districts throughout the county.
Thank you for that, Oliver.
Okay, Chief Sorensen, did you hear the question?
Yes, good morning, council. Thank you for having us here today. The question concerning the city of Battleground, they do have this in their comp plan and have been collecting impact fees for quite some time.
Okay, other questions? Gary, did you have questions of the chief?
Yes, please. So this kind of comes out of the blue for us, Chief. Obviously, everyone in the county fully supports fire suppression and whether volunteer or professional services that staff most of our departments. We don't control your budget, and we have among some of the highest in the state impact fees already in Clark County. So what I'm concerned about is, number one, what is the real need? You know, what is your budget? We don't manage your budget. And I mean, what's the shortfall? What isn't working with the present levy system? And so, because certainly we have to be mindful of driving up all these costs and on the backs of our single families. And with 11 districts or potentially 12, certainly if we were to pass this, then, you know, there would be a long line of asking for impact fees as well. So what isn't working? What is the delta in your budget? Is your budget not balanced? What's going on here?
Well, it is balanced, and currently our assessment is $1.36 per thousand value. Per statute, we can go up to 150. We're currently at 136. I've shared our revenue and expenditure budgets for 2021 with you. Most of that revenue is used in operational costs. We do have a reserve fund that is comprised of two things. One is a reserve where it's designed to try to fund replacement of things, capital that you know, times out, gets old, and then also fund things like retirement requirements that we're obligated to do, and leave accruals and things like that. So in our reserves, we have money set aside for equipment, both apparatus, rescue equipment, building maintenance. But the majority of the rest of the budget is used for just staffing and getting the job done. What this doesn't fund is future needs to serve the community and continue the service level that we have. That would include anything that's, you know, like facilities, equipment purchases. We don't collect enough to keep up with our equipment needs. Currently, we try to run our engines 25 years, and the more we run them, the faster they run out, and we just don't have the funds to do that. So what this is designed to do is to help pay for new development that is coming into our area, so that the 25-year resident who's already paid for the service that we have doesn't have to fund that in the future. So the capital facilities plan has calculations in it to predict what we are going to see in the next 20-year time span. And the rates are based on what we anticipate as volume in service needs, and then the capital to support those service needs. And that's all following required RCWs that are in the growth management plan.
Does that answer your question, Gary?
So if I may ask a follow-on, and I had asked this question of Oliver, but this was really in your domain. So I'm all for reform of funding streams, whether it's schools or not. Everything seems to be pretty piecemeal between haves and have-nots across different districts, whether schools or fire. So what is the actual deficit that we're facing? How much do you need to spend? And couldn't it be raised? I'm not advocating that you raise the levy amount to 150, but why toss out the process that's in place? I understand the prediction and that you want to buy more equipment and build new stations. I wish my first response to seeing your briefing slides were I wish the sheriff would do this too, because they have need of substations for response times out in the rural community that I haven't really seen a plan for. So what is the actual dollar amount that you need to raise against? How much do you project will be raised by this $500 additional fee? And is there any guarantee, this goes back to what I asked Oliver, is there any guarantee that the levy amounts would go down as a result of this assessment being placed on new construction? I mean, I just haven't seen an overarching plan, what the overarching need actually is today, what the projected revenue stream would be with this additional funds. I just didn't see that level of detail.
Okay, that is outlined in the capital facilities plan. And on the 20-year estimate, we're looking at 16,640,000 based on what we project the growth and related volume to be. And that's really what drives the calculation and lands us on these values.
Okay.
And this,
So Chief, to meet that 16 million, if you went to, what is the $1.36 per assessed value? I mean, all the constituents out there complaining about their assessments going up, so that amount they're paying per $1,000 goes up every year, pretty much. And so what is the projected resource of funds coming in under the current system? And what would it be under $1.50? What would it be adding in an additional $500 per new residence?
well, again, the estimated 20-year expenditure is what sets the proposed impact fee amount. So that's all a calculation that is meeting the current requirements. As far as your question involving our expenditures, if you look at our expenditure budget, you can see what the cost is. And we are limited to a 1%, as you know, annual increase in our budget. Now, in 17, we had a vote, and the district voted to allow us 6% annually for 6 years. And so that, and we could have gone up to 150, but we did not. We set it at 142 at the time of the vote to try to keep that cost at a reasonable level for the community. And that simply pays for all the increases that we see annually, whether it be in, apparatus, fuel, repair, labor contracts, all those kinds of things. Currently, we don't have debt, and we have never had debt. We bought a ladder truck using the state local program, and that was to keep our surveying rating bureaus numbers down. What that sets is our insurance rates for our customers. So we're currently at a 4 in District 3, and it's all District 3 now, but in the city portion and in the county portion, we're at a 4. And that results in more insurance fees if that goes up. So that's really what drives our service levels, and then also our response time. So we're trying to maintain a 6-minute response time. That's our standard of cover. And we're trying to maintain an insurance rating of 4 to contain costs for our constituents. I hope I answered your question. But
I'm going to go ahead and step in here just for a minute with to see if I understand this. The city of Battle Ground has already has implemented this impact fee. How in the past have you dealt with capital expenditures? What did you do in order to fulfill your capital needs? That's question number 1. Question number 2, I asked, or I had the county manager ask the treasurer, if you can bond, you can go, just like a school district does, out to the voters and ask them to approve bonding a new facility. So I was pleased to know that fire districts can do that if they need more facilities. So I guess what I'd like to know, I guess my main question is, what have you done in the past to fulfill your capital needs? And why is it different now?
Well, in the past, we've ran bonds. In 1993, we ran a bond. Keep in mind, the bond applies to all taxable property within the area. So that means that all people would pay that bond rate. What we've done since that bond, and that was a period of time that people paid, and that's been paid off. Since that time, we've purchased apparatus as we can. We try to save it up. In the case of the ladder truck, in fact, there's a couple that we've used the state low interest. It's a 10-year. In this case, it's a 10-year loan essentially to pay for that ladder truck. What this does, the impact fee, it does not impose those costs on the current residents who have paid up to this point. It helps fund future development, future capital needs based on that future new development.
Okay, so the whole district benefits, even those people that have paid in the past are going to benefit from the fire station being able to respond to fires. So I don't understand just saying you don't want to, since the whole district benefits, the whole district should pay for it. And, you know, just as much, you're not going to just go to these new homes and fight their fires. You're going to go to everybody's home and fight the fire. So I don't quite understand why not everybody should pay. It's a full district and you respond to everybody in that district, regardless how new or old their residence is. So my concern here is that if we allow your district to place impact fees upon people in unincorporated Clark County, which are in District 3, we're setting off the ability for all of the other, the 10 or 11 other fire districts to be able to implement impact fees. And I'm not, we all want fire coverage and we all want to, you know, not to be paying huge fire insurance for our homes. And I want you to stay at least a level 4 as well, whatever that is. But it concerns me that implementing this is a domino effect to every other district. And since you have the ability to go out for a bond when you need a facility, capital facilities, I think that's actually a better way to go about it. So that's my little spiel. Are there other questions of the council?
Madam Chair,
Larry?
I just have a comment more or less to piggyback on what you indicated, Chair. And I've got to precede this also by saying that my support for fire districts is absolutely there, and support for your work as a chief is there. And the plan, the capital facilities plan that you put together was really very, very clear and very well done. And thank you for that. I have the same concern about putting in place, though, an impact fee. And there's a tendency for people to say, well, you know, it's just $512. But the builders are concerned about any level of fee when it opens a door. And this I don't see as a little door of $512 only. I see it as a big door that opens up a whole new process of impact fees for the 11 or 12 fire districts. And that's one of the reasons I asked how many fire districts we have in Clark County, because I wasn't aware that there were 11 or 12. So I could see that domino effect on the impact fees. And given our concern for impact fees for new development, that is a great concern for me.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Lynn.
Chief, thanks for putting this together and coming and speaking with us. I think we can see where the rest of the board is going, but I would like to offer a different perspective. I also appreciate the detailed work that went into your capital facilities plan. I think that it does demonstrate an understanding of the nature and need for impact fees and lays out the case for it very well. Impact fees exist to help pay for system improvements related to the impacts of new development. They don't actually fully pay for them, but they help pay for them. And the name of the fee, an impact fee, it is to offset that impact. When we continue to develop, that has an impact on the area. So yes, by having new houses come into an area, the existing residents will have their service impacted. And this long-range look at what's going to be needed to handle the new development is a very strong case, for me at least, for the need to help pay for the impacts of that development. I think we can see where this is going, but I do think that this is a very reasonable way to support our community, to actually, instead of just say that we support things, to actually demonstrate that support by allowing service levels to be where taxpayers and constituents need and want them to be. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
I take issue with the saying that we support as really pejorative. And I do support the fire system. We have a levy system. This fire district can raise their levy, and the fire district does, each district supports all of the residences in the area. So I really do have a concern about the other districts coming in and doing this. And we are told over and over that we have, that our housing is not affordable. This is one of those things that adds to the inaffordability of homes. And while I know it doesn't sound like a very large fee, and it is in the rural area, so it's not going to be impacting, the multifamily dwellings per unit, et cetera. But it does affect the price of homes. And so I think that we have to be cognizant of that. And I am, and I think that we need to protect that, because I see a slippery slope and a domino effect with the others. And you've given very good detailed information, and I appreciate that. I've already stated kind of where I am. So I just wanted to make those statements at this point. Are there any other questions of the council or comments?
Yeah, I did also find Councilor Lynch's statement pretty unfair to the rest of the council, because we certainly do support the fire districts. Those costs, those impact fees are tremendous across the county. They're highest in the state, as we saw in our briefings from the 179th. We need to do our best to get those fees down. There are other mechanisms to keep up with the rolling stock and the capital structure, as the chair mentioned, with bonding. And assessments go up every year. That we have the same issues with the school levies coming in after McCleary, especially. Our property taxes are among some of the highest cumulatively, with all the fees that are paid and all the assessments that occur, anywhere in the country, we're among the very highest. Our property tax rate of 1% cap is among the lowest, but overall, we just grab money from every way. We need to focus on getting those impact fees down and getting a more reliable way to fund all the resources that are out there. And my comment to the chief about, I wish the sheriff had a capital plan like that presented to us, because it was so good. It was a model. And we do need substations for law enforcement out in the rural community, especially in my district. So I'm looking forward to seeing that improvement, because our response time for law enforcement is pretty poor in some of the areas, remote areas of the county. Having said that, I just don't see the level of detail to change, and it is a slippery, not just a slippery slope. It would be unfair to every other district for us to then deny those impact fees. How do we make that decision? Well, we don't want you to have the same service capability or funding mechanism that District 3 has. We can't do that. We can't. The same way that I think it's very hard for the schools to do it. So in any case, I absolutely fully support our fire services, and if there's a real need, we need to address it. And I appreciate the planning 20 years out that's gone into this and the level of detail, but I don't support this additional levy at this point. Or impact fee, rather, not levy.
Okay. Any further discussion? I don't think that we need to. Kathleen, do we have to, if there is no motion, we don't act on it, correct? Or do we need an action?
I think to be clear for the record, I would like to make sure that we have the majority that is giving the direction. And while there's been comments, I think it would be cleaner to have a vote.
So Madam Chair, I would move that we don't amend our code, that we don't enter into an interlocutory agreement, that we don't amend our comprehensive plan at this time to include a $500 and 12 impact fee in the unincorporated area in District 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to deny the request of Fire District 3 for impact fees. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Chief, and your commissioners for putting this together. I regret we can't do it, but I think it's the best course. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on then to old business, private road of Northeast 40th Avenue update.
Thank you, Council. For the record, I'm Matt Creamy with Public Works. So last week, we brought in front of you a project that was submitted for a land division, and just a recap of that one. And we had some questions we wanted to respond to you and then ask for a direction on those. So just a quick recap. We had an application that came in and on the nearby Northeast 40th Avenue and north of 199th Street. And during their pre-application process, it was determined there's a 20 feet of property, about 1,230 feet long, that's owned by the county. And it's not a dedicated right-of-way. It was actually a property that's owned by the county, and that was retained through property tax issues actually back in 1930. We brought in that some of the concerns we had and some of the options the council could choose through a memo, and one of the staff recommendation was that we surplus the property, and then that way property could move forward and they could build a private street. Councilor Bowerman had asked what if we have to open up that property for bidding, or is it, or if there are other processes. So we talked to our PA's office, and Bill is online too, so if we have further questions, we can chime in. Is that we looked at the property, and the property is not marketable. And typically, if we have to surplus the property, yes, we do have to open it for bidding. But this property is not a property that's buildable. It's not marketable because it's 20 feet wide, 1,230 feet long. It's not something that could be subdivided or built anything on it. So with that, if the council approves that or agrees with that, that would allow us to open negotiation with the property owner that's actually developing. So that way we can negotiate the, excuse me, the sale of the property, and then require as part of a sale that they dedicate easement to make sure the properties to the north, that 8 lots that were subdivided, have access, and if there's any utility easements, they remain. And that way that becomes a private street, and that way all the maintenance and follow-ups were done by the property owners, and the county will not be there, and our risks are minimized. I think we have drafted a resolution about that one, which I can turn it over to Bill, talk a little bit more about that, or if you have any questions that I could answer from what I just talked about.
Are there questions of the council?
Well, how did the developer react after our last meeting and to your further looking at surplusing this instead of going the route of a right-of-way?
I don't think we have had a discussion with them. We wanted to make sure the council felt comfortable with our recommendation first before starting negotiation with that. So after we get a direction from council, then we'll open up the discussion with the developer and move forward.
Madam Chair, question.
Bauman.
Is it correct then that there are 2 property owners who really need access to this strip of land for their use in order to come and go from their property?
David Jardine, I think if you're online, if you can talk a little bit more about the access issues, but my understanding is that is correct. This will provide access for this subject property and also those properties to the north, the 8 lots. So David, did you want to elaborate a little bit more on that one?
Yes, thank you, Council. David Jardine. The existing Northeast 40th Avenue does serve not only the subject property that wants to develop, but it also serves 8 parcels that are fully developed with single-family residences north of the property that wants to develop. So there is interest by 8 parcels north of the development parcel that need access onto 40th Avenue.
I think there was an
So to
aerial
follow
photo.
up, is it only those 2 property owners that have interest in this road?
So yes, if I understand the question correctly, it is the 8 parcels north and the parcel that wants to develop. Those are the 2 groups that would have interest in that roadway.
Now, are the 8 parcels owned by one party or by 8 parties, or how does that work?
They are owned by 8 parties. They are fully developed single-family residences.
So if I understand, the surplusing would be done only with the new developer.
So David, let me chime in here. Let me try to answer your questions, Counselor. This is Bill Richardson with the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. The property, which is a 20-foot strip, is county property. It would need to be surplused. And then it would need to be deemed unmarketable so that we could enter into private negotiations with the current new developer who's developing this new lot. Your question as to who has a property interest in that strip of land, well, the county does, that's it. But I think your question is actually who has an interest in using that land. It would be the proposed developed property, because my understanding is they cannot get access to 199th, which is the main feeder road there. They would need to get access through Northeast 40th Avenue. So they're going to want to access Northeast 40th Avenue to get their vehicles onto 199th. But that would be a new access for this proposed development. In addition to that, there are 8 separate residential property owners to the north that currently utilize the road that is on this 20-foot strip. They have an interest in using this access because they've been using it historically, and quite frankly, that's their only way to get to a public right-of-way, which is, again, 199th. So there's a developer for the 40-acre lot, and there are 8 individual residential house owners to the north that all have an interest in using Northeast 40th Avenue to access 199th. Does that answer your question, Counselor?
Almost. So,
Okay.
given the surplusing that is proposed, that would
Mhm.
be an arrangement only with the new developer and not with any of the owners that currently have those 8 lots, correct?
That's correct. The surplus would be the county, the surplus determination by the council would be the county determining that the 20-foot strip, 1,230-foot, 20-foot wide strip no longer serves a public purpose, and that it's available for surplusing such that the county can dispose of it. The council would then have to find that the property was unmarketable, such that instead of going up to public auction, which is what happens with a normal piece of property that is surplus, it would instead be allowed to undergo private negotiations with an adjoining landowner. So the negotiations would be with the person that owns the 40-acre parcel that is proposed for development. Not the 8 residences to the north.
So we would be saying that it's not marketable, but it is of interest to the 8 landowners that have those 8 homes there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because part of what you said, Bill, is that there's no public purpose. There certainly is a public purpose if it actually serves 8 different parcels. And my question is how, I mean, what, they've just been using this, and because it's public property, there's no adverse possession?
Oh, they cannot adverse. No, nobody can
Correct.
adverse county-owned property. That's
Right,
not
I
available.
understand that. So is that, I mean, it is a roadway for them right now, is it not?
It is. It is a built private road.
Bill, this is Taylor Halvick. Can you address the easement issue?
Well, are you talking about the easement that currently lies on the 40-acre parcel, or
How the 8 lot owners to the north would gain access to their property were the council to pursue surplusing the property?
Oh, absolutely. So what would happen is if we were to enter into private negotiations with the developer or with the proposed development of the 40 acres, in doing so, in that negotiation, we could require that an easement be placed on that parcel that would provide perpetual access use of that roadway for the 8 properties to the north. In other words, this developer would be using it for their own access, but in owning that property, they would have to provide the owners to the north with access to that road also. And quite frankly, there's already an easement on the 40-acre lot for the owners to the north. It just doesn't match up with the physical placement of the roadway. There's actually a road maintenance agreement and an easement on the, I think, 30 foot of the easterly boundary of the 40-acre parcel. So they would just move that easement over laterally. It would not shut off access of the 8 property owners to 199th. That would be something that would be required, quite frankly, in private negotiations. So we would ensure that they have access.
Does that address your concern, Councilor Bowerman? It addresses mine.
Has there been any communication with the owners of those lots?
Council, are you talking about the 8 lots to the north?
Yes.
I don't think I'm aware of any, but I know there's typically a notification goes to adjacent property owners when there's land division. So, David, are you aware of it, of the notification? But I know typically when there's land subdivision or any kind of application, the adjacent property owners are notified.
Ahmad is correct on that, but at this point, because this has only been a pre-application conference, a formal land use application to divide that property has not been submitted for review. So notification of a formal land use has not gone out to the adjacent property owners. Yes.
Who's maintaining the road right now?
Well, if the agreements are being followed, it would be the 8 property owners to the north, Chair.
Okay, and so if this goes and the property is surplus, I think part of the negotiations need to also include not gouging the 8 owners to the north with excessive fees to maintain the road. If you see what I mean? I mean, this is really a convoluted thing. It is not quite as straightforward as it seems.
Madam
Or
Chair.
maybe it is, maybe it actually is, but the expression of it somehow is convoluted, so.
So, Madam Chair, may I comment and throw in some questions that
Yeah,
I want to segue off the word convoluted. So I don't understand, this conversation has kind of morphed. So we have 8 property owners that are already served by what is somewhat characterized as a private road. We're going to have a new development that we're holding up because of a right-of-way issue on some surplus, valueless land of the county, and they're going to be putting in new homes in there as well. It seems to me at some point, a private road's typically like 2, 3, 4 homes, but we've already got more than that, and we're going to put in more homes. Why isn't this a public road? Why don't we surplus, clear up the right-of-way issue and create a normal easement from the center line of the road, keep it a public road? It would be very enticing to change the character of all of our public roads into private roads and put the burden on local neighborhoods to keep them up. But I'm not sure that's what the direction we want to head. So I believe we've got a kind of a mix match here, and I don't understand why we just don't have a road that's going to serve this new development, serve the existing 8 properties, and have a normal easement from the center line to either side, so we can have utilities and whatever rural standard we have for that roadway. I don't expect drainage ditches and sidewalks and fire hydrants. We know that we're not going to go to that standard. But so what prevents us from just helping the developer out, protecting the 8 property owners, and having this as a public roadway?
Well, if we have it as a public roadway, Counselor, it needs to be brought up to county standards, which is an expenditure of county funds. And that's because this road doesn't, I mean, you could say it serves a public purpose, but then every road would serve a public purpose. And I don't think that that's the meaning behind the code. It has to actually serve a purpose other than simply the limited access to a residential house to be a public road. It has to serve other purposes. And this one does not at this time. It simply serves 8 residences. So the thought process is to surplus this property, privately negotiate it with the property owner to the west, the person who owns the 40 acres that's proposed for development. In that development process, quite frankly, they could, as part of that development, build that road up to a proper county standard and then propose dedicating it to the county for future use. And then it would be up to the county engineer to accept that dedication as a public road that provides access to the 8 houses to the north and the development. But
Yep.
but as it stands, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
Counselor.
so Bill, you just said exactly what I was going to lead you to. Whatever rural standard we need for a rural road, which isn't much and shouldn't be much, that we do that through development agreements all the time to have them brought up to standard. And so I'm not sure we're heading down the right path by surplusing the land and turning it into a private road.
Well, right.
Okay, so I actually see the benefit of surplusing it, having it built to a certain standard, allowing for the 8 homes that are currently using it remain, continue to have that access. And so I understand what Bill is saying too. This isn't, yeah, there are a lot of things to consider when you consider public road or public access, public purpose, whatever. So if there are no further questions, I'd like to kind of move on. What is the feeling of the council at this point? Are you ready to surplus it and start some negotiations or what?
Yes, so that was my point. I think we should solve this for the developer and the 8 property owners. It should be surplus. We should have a standard rural road there, and that can be negotiated with the developer to do the grading necessary and maintain it as a public road.
Okay, you want to make a motion to that effect? Or was that a motion?
Well, it could be a motion. Did we need a motion? I thought we just, yes, I'll make that motion.
I think we do, we at least need to know that there are at least 3 counselors that want to surplus this property to begin, I guess, the negotiations on this road and the division. Councilor Lamb?
Chair, yeah, I do support declaring it surplus and unmarketable and moving forward with the resolution that we have. I don't support trying to make it a public road at this moment. So I believe that is what Councillor Medveji suggested. So
I don't think so.
He's nodding. So
Oh, okay.
I won't second that motion, but I'd be happy to make a different one when the time comes.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay, so just to clarify, Gary, will you clarify, please, for me what your motion was?
To surplus that strip of property, to allow the agreement with the developer to build the road to service not only his development, but those 8 existing properties, and to bring it up to whatever minimal county road standard would apply out there, and to keep it as a public road.
And so to keep it, well, okay.
So Chair,
Yes.
this is Bill Richardson. Just to
Bill.
make sure I'm understanding, we did draft a resolution. I wasn't sure that was before the council at this time. I thought the purpose of this meeting was to answer your questions from last week. I think we still need to bring the resolution before you, and I can tell you right now that the way that resolution is drafted, it really has only 2 provisions. One is to declare, and maybe oh, that's the resolution right there. I wasn't sure if that had been placed before you yet, but if it is, there's only 2 provisions in it. One is to surplus the property, And 2 is to deem it unmarketable such that we can enter into private negotiations with the adjoining landowner. The whole discussion behind how that road is built out and whether it's public or private, I would argue comes at a later date through the development process, not through this resolution.
I would agree.
So-
I would agree. So, Councilman Edvigie, would you amend your, would you mind amending your motion just to move forward, to have them move forward with this resolution, which we will, maybe at our next council time, not council time, but hearing, whatever we need to do, to vote on the resolution.
That's a good friendly amendment, and I would accept that. Can I ask whoever's controlling the resolution to kind of go down a few more whereases so we can see the bottom? There you go. Okay, yeah, I would make a motion to move forward with that resolution so we can then take the next step of looking at whether this needs to be a private or public road brought up to standard and negotiated with the developer to make that, to bring it up. It's probably just going to be additional grading and the resetting of the easement for the county from the center line.
Okay,
of
but
the
we
road.
would, but we need to allow the negotiations to go forward, and then we'll talk about what those negotiations are. And I think that Public Works understands, and you know, where we're going with this.
Yeah.
What we as a council would see. Are we actually approving this resolution right now? Could we do that, Kathleen, or no?
We do have a resolution number if the council chooses
Okay.
to move forward with it today.
Let's do that. What is the number, Rebecca?
The number is 2021-02-07.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve Resolution 2021-02-07.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2021-2-07. Is there further discussion?
Only that I would rescind the earlier motion and friendly amendment to the motion and just pursue the resolution at this point.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in. Okay, we're going to move to CFR Title V funding, CARES Act funding. I think Mark Gassaway, who's here for that? Is that Mark or Kathleen?
Mark
Or
Gassaway.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Council. Mark Gassaway, Clark County Finance Director. And Rebecca, I don't know, do you have the CRF report? Yes, thank you. So Council, this will look familiar to you. A few weeks ago, we presented this first page of the CRF Coronavirus Relief Fund report. And at that time, Council requested that we add a little bit more information to it. So this first page you've seen before. It basically summarizes all of the activity that we had under Title V of the Coronavirus Relief Act. There's now been a second page added to this report. And Rebecca, if you could scroll down. In addition to the Title V funds, the county also received approximately 19 million in Title VI funds. Title VI funds were much more restricted, and they went to specific purposes, and they were also distributed by the state through different agencies. So rather than coming from the Department of Commerce, the various agencies throughout the state distributed these funds. So this gives you now, with the 2 pages of the report, a complete picture of all of the funding that the county has received and distributed over the last year. The Title V funds, the summation of those is approximately $48 million, whereas the additional funding is from Title VI is just over $19 million. So again, between the two, about $68 million or so is what was spent this last year. So I just wanted to give you a chance to look at this. We'd like to be able to distribute this information. PIO has been very helpful in putting this report together, and they've recommended that at some point shortly we do a press release on this, but we wanted council to have the ability to read and comment on this before we did anything publicly. So I'll turn it back to council to see if there's any comments or questions that I can answer concerning the Title V or Title VI funds as they've been distributed. So,
Are there questions or comments by the council on these 2 pages? I see none. So apparently you can move forward with doing some sort of a release on that.
okay, great. In addition, at that time, council had asked about additional funding, particularly on the Title V CRF money. And so I sent a communication to the Office of Financial Management, who had been directing the Title V CRF funds, and also the Department of Commerce, which were the administrators of those funds, and did not receive any response. So at this time, if we could, Rebecca, if we could go to the letter. With the help of Lindsay, we've drafted a letter and to the governor requesting additional funds. As the council may or may not be aware, late December, there was legislation passed that actually extended the use of the CRF funding, and it extended it through the end of 2021. So it gave an additional 12 months. So the state had received funds. It also had received funds that were returned, that were unspent. And what this letter does, basically, it states our position and requests that some of those funds that are still in the hands of the state be distributed to help offset the expense that the county is incurring now and will incur this year to address the COVID pandemic. And so this is a draft letter. I wanted council to have a look at this. It would be proposed that we would have a version of this letter going to the governor's office, also our local legislative contingent, and our federal contingent as well. And so it would be just simply a version with their addresses and information for contact. So
I have a few questions, Madam Chair.
Councilman, did you?
So Mark, thanks for following up on this. I don't know if I understand you were continuing to work even though you were on vacation. Absorbing this.
Sometimes that happens.
Well, I heard, at one of our county conferences with all the other counties that there was a significant amount of money not spent by the state, and there was no dollar amount put to that. And that kind of set in motion this request to kind of follow up. So I appreciate working through the vacation and producing this letter. But do we have any knowledge, is it public, as to how much of the initial allocation to the state that was retained, that could have gone to counties like ours, but was retained by the state? How much is still left unspent? That's my first question.
Yeah. No, we don't have that information. I would be very, like you, I am very interested in seeing a report. I have seen reports from other states. There's one that the state auditor of California did on what the state of California did, but I've not seen an accounting from the state of Washington. And I don't know if there are plans. That would be, I think, a very good question for either our local or our congressional delegation to ask for a reporting of how the state of Washington administered these funds, simply because, as you know, my personal position is that the county did not receive what we were entitled to receive. And I would like to know how that was used. So.
Is there, I understand that's not really reflected in this letter, but is there a polite way of suggesting or asking that so we know what's still out on the table for us to request?
We may.
Go ahead.
I was going to say. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I actually think it would be more effective coming from a different body, not us. However, I'll let Mark, you were ready to say something. I actually think it should be coming from our congressional delegation.
Right.
Because this is federal funding that went to the state, and I think there should be an accounting of every penny and where it went, and then we could see. But
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to suggest that maybe we add a paragraph to this letter when we send it to the local delegation and to the federal delegation, requesting an accounting be published from the state. And again, that could be added very easily, I think. And I'm kind of speaking for myself and Lindsay, since we kind of work on this together. Lindsay, you're welcome to chime in if you feel that's a problem. So.
Well, and I think the point's well taken by both of you, that it would be just the forwarding document that sends that letter to our congresswomen and our senators, rather, as well as our congresswomen and local delegation. Can I ask my other quick question? And I don't know if you have an answer for this, Mark, but if we were to pursue as a county, not just the state's effort at the fairground using the National Guard, but if we had within our own incident management plan a request to either the reserves or for National Guard support for our efforts, is there a mechanism to fund that? I mean, we used to call them MIPers in the Department of Defense. I mean, is it a transfer of funds? Who pays for those DoD assets if the county was to be supported by either the National Guard or Reserve for long-term vaccination efforts?
I don't know that I can answer that question. That's a logistics question that I think would work better through the Department of Health. However, what I know is what we're able to manage locally, we have a much better determination on how it's spent and how it works. As you know, with the fairgrounds efforts, they're coordinating it to some extent with us, but it's really not within our purview of how that operation works. And so what we're asking for through this letter is direct funding to the county, so we have determination of how that gets spent. And of course, council, we inform you when we have suggestions, but really it comes down to how does council want to see these funds put back into our community. So
actually, I want to go back to the question about who to ask for this counting of funds. And I'm just thinking about the meetings we had with our federal contingents. And I think that we need to send it both to our legislative and our federal, because there didn't seem to be a lot of interest on the part of either senators, one in particular that just isn't, she, or at least her aide, that's who we spoke to, just says, we are sending this to the state and we trust the state to do with it as they see fit. So I think it should include both delegations, both federal and state, adding a paragraph perhaps requesting that they ask for accounting. I don't know how the other counselors feel, but I'd toss that out as a possibility of how to at least request the information. Whether we'll get it, I'm entirely sure, but.
I would expect at some point in the future, the state auditor's office will do a full accounting. However, to date, we've not seen anything, so.
Councilors want to comment on that?
Actually, Chair, I had a related but different question. I certainly support asking the legislative group for follow-up on that accounting. That's something that should have probably already been done. My question goes to before my days as a counselor. So if you would indulge me on this, I remember when we received in the county what I'm going to call a shortfall on our funds. And what I recall hearing as a member of the community at the time was that we did not get a response to why we got that shortfall. Did we get a response, or was it just left dangling?
The response that we received basically was from the Office of Financial Management, and they took issue with the guidance that the Treasury had provided, and their position was that the formula for distribution was not binding on the state. And that's kind of where it's been left. I mean, that was their position. Again, if you look at the state of California's report that I was referring to previously, their state auditors basically found that the state of California was in violation because they did not follow that guidance. So it's an issue that we talked with our legal staff about it. There was enough I guess leeway that we did not pursue anything at that time. And so I don't know, other than making a formal request for additional funds through this mechanism, I don't know that we have a determined path of recourse. So
given that, I'm wondering if there is any advisability for accompanying a letter with another in-person means of delivering the letter and having a good conversation with the people who are in the governor's office and responsible for determining what formula would be used.
So Mark, I may want to jump in here just from a political standpoint, and then feel free to add on. So at this point, the legislature is the one that's taking a look at the remaining CARES Act funding and putting together the budget. And that is a very, very fast moving train at this point. And so while I certainly agree with the need for additional transparency and having the report, I think that this is like I said, it's a fast moving train and we need to focus on getting on the train. And then once we're on the train, talk about, hey, we need to know what's going on. We need to have this information. Here's the background information in terms of what happened before. I think that this letter sets the stage for basically saying, this is why we need to get on this train. The governor's office, I think, is taking a very hands-off approach on this because the legislature is in session at the moment. They weren't in session previously. And so OFM, Scott Merriman, all of these people that we're talking about, they were the ones making the decisions at the time. And so they would be the ones that would have the final say. They're certainly involved at this point. Scott's constantly around the legislature, but it's now, I think, getting it in the hands of our legislative delegation, talking about it in our meeting that we have this week, reiterating to them the importance of this. They're the decision makers at this point. And so focusing on the fact that we continue to have public health needs. The legislature is notorious for not necessarily wanting to rectify prior wrongs when they have all of these wrongs sitting in front of them. And so if we say, look, we have public health needs, we cannot meet right now, we have no funding, that's what this CARES Act funding was for. We were shorted money before. Therefore, because we have a need and we didn't receive before, we need to have funding now, and keep it really simple, really digestible. And then, as we go along, focus on getting all of this additional information. As Mark said, I think the state auditor's office too will be doing reports, probably sooner rather than later, and not get bogged down in trying to get, our federal delegation on board and all of these things. Really focus on people that are in control of that bag of money, if you will, at the time.
And to Lindsay's point, yes, the control of this really has shifted at this point. The governor was able to do what they did. The governor's office was able to do what they did because they were under executive orders at the time and the legislature wasn't in session. So with that change, I agree with Lindsay that we really need to change our focus. We do need to address the governor's office simply because that's where it starts. But then our local our local state delegation really has a lot of input into how this remaining funding is being spent.
And just from a legislative standpoint, given the fact that the budget negotiations happen behind closed doors and everyone is going to be clamoring for this money, I don't anticipate asking for a report is going to yield much results at this point. The recommendation is we have a need, we have a demonstrated continued need, we didn't get much before that, therefore we should be a priority.
That sounds actually very, it's true. That's true. What good? Yeah, it's more work for a report. Let's just ask for the money. It's sitting there, or very possibly sitting there. And so ask for what we can get. But, as an aside, if we found out where some of this went and some of it's sitting there, and just how much, like you said, once that's out, everybody else is going to be asking for it too. So, I don't know. What do you think, Council? Do you want to just send the letter as it is? Do you want to ask for an additional report? What's your pleasure?
So, Madam Chair, I agree with everything that Lindsay just said, the practicality of it, and the fact that we're probably not going to get a positive answer anyway. All along we had been having these discussions with Mark and Vanessa and our health department on identifying all of the needs that we have, putting it a dollar amount against it, so we can show, number one, that we have the capacity to spend it and are spending it in appropriate ways. So I think that is the better route, to just lean forward. And that was partly my question, because I still do see the need for long-term support from our hospital units and the National Guard and Reserves, and wondering how that funding stream works. But I think I'm pretty clear that I think CARES Act in one way or another would fund that. So I that's where our emphasis should be. I agree with Lindsay that, demanding a report or asking for a report or transparency probably won't get us very far.
I would say asking for the National Guard isn't going to get us very far either. So, and the reason I say that is because we already have competition with the state delivering these vaccines, and they're not going, I don't think they'll pay us if we do it. It's going to be on our nickel if we're going to do something like that. But that's a whole different conversation than this one right here, or at least I see it as a different conversation. So I think what we're looking for here is the okay to send this letter again. Is that what we're looking for here? To get approval to send this once again?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a new letter, so yes.
Okay. Or, okay, I remember a similar one, but so, okay, is that okay without objection? And I hear no objections. So let's go ahead and get this signed and sent. All righty?
Okay, thank you. I'll get with Lindsay and we'll get that to you soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on then to counselor reports.
Well, CTRAN met last night, and the Mill Plain Bus Rapid Transit is moving forward. They were also they reported great excitement because a federal grant that they thought was a real long shot did come through. So our local share for the Bus Rapid Transit is going to be lower, meaning that those funds can be used on other projects. So that's fantastic.
Good, thank you. Other reports? Okay, moving on to work session requests. Lindsay.
So the first one here, this is, so for Councilor Bowerman, of course, you're new, but DEEB, the Development Engineering Advisory Board, comes every year to present their annual report and then talk about their general planned items for the foreseeable future. It's usually 1 year. They of course take new things as they come up. You recall the agricultural building permit, that was something that we sent to DEEB. So they, it's not like it's set in stone or anything, but this is their general work plan. So they come to talk to the council, provide their annual report of what they did last year and what they're planning on doing the next year.
Okay, without objection, we'll have this work session since it's necessary too. I mean, we want to know, but it's also something that we are slated to do as an annual review. Any objection? Okay, thank you. There's also a YMCA Battleground Pool discussion, and I'm thinking that each counselor has met with the Westbys. Am I correct with that? Has everyone heard from Mike Westby or Westby and Associates?
I have, Madam Chair, and I had spoken, I think, with one other counselor, or maybe it was during a one-on-one with Julie Olson, who's not present today. I support their request. I had early on asked what mechanisms we might have to fund community assets within a city jurisdiction, because I think it is more of a regional draw for the unincorporated area, all in my district, around surrounding Battleground. So I do support the minimal funding that they're requesting. They were hoping that it would push the city of Battleground to also fully support their initiative, which is mainly private funding, almost predominantly private funding. But yes, I did speak with them, and I'm supportive of their efforts.
So would there actually, I just want to, if this is a presentation, will staff be involved in this as well? Lindsay, do you know, or is this something I put on?
I do not know.
Okay.
Kathleen may have a better sense than I do.
No, there's
Okay.
been no conversations with staff. I think they just reached out to council, and then, like Councilor Meviji mentioned, he had some logistical questions for Lindsay that she answered. So there's been no other discussion with any staff on this.
Okay, so what, how would the council like to move forward on this? Do you want to have them come and talk to us about this. They've talked to us individually. I guess it's been a long time ago, or, a couple months anyway. As to what exactly they are looking for from us, it looks like they want sort of a partnership that would be public, private, and a memo of understanding apparently with the city of Battleground. What's your pleasure, council? Go ahead.
Well, this gets kind of related back to the comment you made the other day about having other people come and do presentations to us, vice the staff coming and do a presentation. And it has been quite some time since I met with them. I thought there were basically two prongs to the ask to us. One, that we support it. And then two, that I think we support it financially. And I think it was I want to say $30,000 as our portion contribution. And that was Lindsay, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was in that ballpark. And my question was, well, how does the county provide funds to an inner city project?
So there's of course a constitutional prohibition, and Taylor can speak more to this, but there's a constitutional prohibition on the gifting of public funds. There are exceptions to that. And one of the exceptions to that is where the public funds are used for a public purpose. And so one of the things that the state does and has been held to be an allowable use, constitutional use of funds is programs like this. And so there are other similar YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, those types of organizations that receive funding from the government for purposes of doing, whether it be capital. It's usually capital, it's usually not operational. It's usually capital that get the government government funding. So this is something where they could probably put in a member request and get capital budget funding. They would at least be eligible for that funding. Whether the legislature chose to fund it is of course up to them. But this is something that it's going to depend on the details, but is probably going to be an allowable use. The question then becomes, from what county funding would you actually do this with? The state has a capital budget. They set aside funds every year for local and member projects that allow these type of things to get funding. And it's rarely ever 100% of their funding. It's usually a very small percentage of the funding. So they have to have a funding plan in place. But the council could, obviously you can't use, restricted funds that couldn't be used for this purpose. So there are a number of funding sources within the county that are restricted and would have to abide by those restrictions. But it is something that there are probably ways in which this could happen, whether or not the council wanted to move forward with that. And I would definitely recommend, conversations with Kathleen and with the budget office and, with Taylor to make sure that, whatever options you're looking at meet the criteria that's required.
So how about this? I'm wondering if the council would support having Westby and Associates talk with Lindsay to explain what it is they're asking, and then we get the proper, and then Lindsay kind of figure out whether it's the treasurer's office, the auditors, these various other offices or departments that might participate county, or even, if there's a recommendation to go to the state, as you've just stated, Lindsay, that there may be something. Would it be okay if we have Lindsay talk to the Westbys and kind of put something together to explain what they're asking, what our opportunities are, and that way we have staff basically explaining what it is we're looking at here?
I think that's a good route, and they have an office right at Fort Vancouver, so they're next door. And then it puts it into staff mode. It gets, Kathleen can have full vision of it and to see the dollar amount and then the possible mechanisms. So I support what you're suggesting, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other counselors, do you have comments, please? Do we have two other counselors participating?
Yes, I'm good with that direction.
As am I.
Thank you. Okay, so that is the direction we will go. Lindsay, do you can talk with me after, or email, or whatever. We can figure out how you should be in contact with the Westby and Associates, okay?
Sure, sounds good. And I'll be in touch with Kathleen as well.
All right, yes. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, policy issues, Lindsay?
So just a couple of things. A reminder, Monday is a holiday, but it is not, it is still a working day for the legislature. So we will have our call on Monday. And also Monday is the policy cutoff. And then the following Monday, the 22nd, is the fiscal cutoff. So this will be an important meeting for us to look at what bills have gotten through the policy cutoff and what bills we may have one last opportunity to weigh in on at the committee level before they go to the floors of their respective chambers. Also an update, there is the dredging letter that was sent out that did go out with the county's logo. So that was finalized and sent out. So happy to answer any questions, but that's all I had for this morning.
Are we meeting on, is this Friday in the off week?
This Friday is the off week, correct?
Okay, all right, great. Okay, is it any questions for Lindsay from the council at all on this? Okay, hearing none, we will adjourn council time. Thank you, Lindsay, and we'll adjourn council time and we will go into executive sessions. One for potential litigation for 10 minutes, one pending litigation for 20 minutes, and one RCW 4231-10-1G for 15 minutes. And we have that sign in on another sign in. So the council time is adjourned. Thank you. And I don't think there'll be any action afterwards. Is that right? Taylor, are you on?
That's correct. No action.
Okay, all righty. Thank you. Bye for now.